experienced good hospitality from people? We really go, wow, these people are really hospitable. They're always opening their doors to everyone. And have you ever felt guilty that you haven't actually invited them back? Have you? No? It's not a thing? Okay. So I don't know how you feel about having guests over or extending hospitality to people around you or to strangers. Some people, as I said, have a real gift in doing that. And that is wonderful. A lot of people in our church definitely has a gift to do that. And it's a good thing. But at times, hospitality is very much like a story that I read, and it's a true story, of a lady who invited guests to her home. And at the table, she turns to a 6-year-old little girl and she said, listen, would you like to say a blessing? And she said, the little girl, I wouldn't really know what to say. And the mom said, just say what you hear mommy always say. And the little girl bowed her head and said, dear Lord, why on earth did I invite all these people over for dinner? That is sometimes that is the reality, isn't it? You not always. Yeah. By receiving others into our homes, we receive them as we would receive Christ himself. Hospitality is an interesting thing. My theme for this morning is hospitality, the heart of discipleship. And you might think, well, what does that have to do with discipleship? And what does it have to do with evangelizing, etc., etc.? So I think sometimes in church world we jump quickly to the questions, how do I convince people that Jesus is true and that Jesus is the King? What do I say? How do I reach out to people? How can we be more a missional church where we reach out to everyone? And I think we need to break that down to the simplicity of what does it look like to be hospitable? And what does hospitality look like in the scheme of discipleship and reaching out to people around us? So to do that, I really want to follow on where Peter left last week. And thank you, Peter, for leading us for the last 2 weeks. And I'm going to continue reading from Matthew. And Peter stopped at, I think, Matthew 10, maybe 20, 30-ish. I can't remember about there. So the reading this morning sort of goes on from there, and we get this section there of 2 verses that I think is quite worthwhile to stop at this morning. And I don't want you, I don't want you to feel guilty. You walk out here this morning and you have 20 people this afternoon for lunch. No, that'll be great though. But I want you to hear the impact and the potential of opening up your life, not only your door and your table, but your life to people. So let's read from verse 40 to 42. Anyone who welcomes you welcomes me, and anyone who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Whoever welcomes a prophet as a prophet will receive a prophet's reward, and whoever welcomes a righteous person as a righteous person will receive a righteous person's reward. And if anyone gives even a cup of cold water to one of these little ones who is my disciple, truly I tell you, that person will certainly not lose their reward. 2 verses here, I'll give you a little bit of context. It comes at the end of Jesus' sort of missionary discourse to his disciples. In Matthew 10, verse 5 to 42, up to this point, Jesus has been talking about what the disciples should do and the difficulties they will face. Peter actually mentioned that last week when he made the point, I think, do not be afraid was one of the points. The Father cares for you was another point. That you will find it difficult. It won't be, you will find it difficult to live a life as a Christian. And we find it more and more difficult in today's life and today's culture to live as a follower of Christ. It is not easy. And then Jesus throws in this little section about hospitality, about opening your door to and receiving also an open door. So these verses speak about hospitality as receiving and welcoming the stranger. And Jesus reminds us of a very profound privilege. And along with that, an amazing responsibility we have as disciples. He tells us that we represent and symbolize him before others. Think about that for a moment. When you open your door, you open the presence of Christ in the situation. He tells us that the reverse is also true, namely that others represent and symbolize him before us. Jesus assures us that he himself is present in our lives when we welcome others in our midst. I love to call that the ministry of presence. Often when you go to difficult pastoral issues, either someone is dying or someone's just lost a family member, someone passed away. It was the hardest thing, and it continues to be the hardest thing in ministry, is to what do you do, what do you say, how do you react, etc., etc. And then I've come to the conclusion that the ministry of presence, of just being there, brings the presence of Christ to the situation and to the family and to the people in that situation. Jesus is present each and every day, also in the hospitality we offer to others. Now, Dietrich Bonhoeffer said it very well in his book, and I just want you to hang in there, and then we're going to unpack all of this a little bit more. He wrote a book, The Cost of Discipleship. He says, they are now Christ's fellow workers and will be like him in all things. Thus they are to meet those to whom they are sent as if they were Christ himself. When they are welcomed into a house, Christ enters with them. They are the bearers of his presence. They bring with them the most precious gift in the world, the gift of Jesus Christ. Then he goes on and he says, and with them they bring God the Father, and that means indeed forgiveness and salvation, life and blessing. That is the reward of their toil and suffering. Every service people give them is service provided to Christ himself. We bring Christ before others in our homes, in the church, in school, at work, at play, in the whole world. When we offer, and I think I've put this on the slide, I want you to reflect on that for a second. When we offer and receive hospitality, Jesus is made present. This truly is the most precious gift we could give to anyone. Not your profound explanation of why Christ is the King of Kings and the Son of God. Not your amazing knowledge of the Bible, of explaining things that is hard to understand. But in the opening of your door, in the opening of your life, so that others come in to your life, into the mess, it's there where we experience Christ. I had a bit of a look at the word hospitality. It sort of sounds a bit like hospital. You know, hospital or hospitality industry. Both of those are probably appropriate sort of associations. In both hospitals and hotels, guests and patients is offered a place to sleep, a place to eat, a place for restoration, for healing, a place of healing, a place of resting. Hospitality. This is what we typically think when we hear the word hospitality. A room and some great food that's on offer for free. Good hospitality. Is that biblical hospitality is my question. Is biblical hospitality more than a room or food or opening your table on a Sunday afternoon? The word hospitality can be found 4 times, exactly this word. In Romans 12, 1 Timothy 5, Hebrews 13, and 1 Peter. To summarize these verses, show that hospitality is both, and this is important, is both an action, inviting someone, preparing something for someone, and affection, receiving and loving a stranger. What is the distinction there? Why do I make the distinction? And the answer is this. It is possible to offer all the components of hospitality. a food, a bed, etc., a shower, without love, but then it is not biblical hospitality. I want to say it again. It's possible to offer hospitality, which is a great thing, a great gesture, but it's not necessarily biblical hospitality, because biblical hospitality, you don't only give your hands, you also open your heart. Anyone can do acts of hospitality, the outward dimension. Sometimes they always have people over, and it's always one. I often wonder, is it more for them or is it for the others? And also I think sometimes too is, who sit around the table? Are they the familiar, the friends, the one we're comfortable with? Or are they the outcasts sometimes? Are they the ones that's never invited? Are they the ones that lose out, that's alone, that's marginalized? Anyone can do acts of hospitality, but there is an inner dimension of hospitality that really requires a change of heart. 1 Peter 4 verse 9, and I think I've put that on the screen, says we are to show hospitality to one another without grumbling. Oh, now we all feel guilty. If we grumble or complain while giving food or lodging or reaching out to someone, we have really not shown biblical hospitality yet. Is it always easy? No, it takes effort. Is it always, oh, I'm so happy, and it takes effort. This is because hospitality is really the glad reception of the stranger. Hospitality engages the stranger with both our hands and our hearts. Peter takes one step further and expands the usual use of hospitality. And he goes, show hospitality to one another. But I want to just stop there for a second. And I want us to think about what this means. Hospitality and welcome. What does that look like in our lives, in your life, in the life of the church? Where do you draw your lines of who you invite into your life? Where do you stretch yourself in who you invite into your life? I'm not saying for dinner. I'm telling into your lives. Who do you want to spend time with? Hospitality and welcome is not saying, I agree with your lifestyle. I agree with all you say. But it is to open your door and to welcome. I'm saying that because we sometimes put boundaries around who we welcome. If we do not agree with someone's theology, we do not agree with someone's lifestyle, we say, I'm going to cut them out of my life because I do not associate with that. Yes, there is a time for that, where that is unhealthy for you to continue to be in a group that is damaging your life. That's true. I'm not talking about that circumstance. I'm talking about sometimes we as a church, worldwide, say we want to associate with that group and that group and that group. But those Baptists, I'm not joking, Baptists, those Lutherans, those Uniting Church people, those Anglicans, those Pentecostals, those, that's not our thing. To welcome, to open your door, you do not have to agree, because it's not you who is going to argue some sort of point. It is the presence of Christ in you that will come and make the difference in the situation. Why is this so important? I think it is important because we have put up barriers of who we want to engage and who not. And that's a natural thing in many ways in our lives, that's not our type of people, that's our type of people, we only engage with that. But hospitality has no boundaries. You are called to show love to the new kid at school, to your Muslim neighbor, your atheist cousin, the illegal immigrant, the refugee, the one with a long criminal history, the one who's struggling with addictions, the one who's struggling with relationships. You are called to love, receive the widow that sits potentially beside you right now this morning. You are called to love and receive the one who's going through a marriage breakdown who might be sitting right next to you this morning. The one who has no relationship with a child who sits next to you this morning. The one who's struggling with addictions who might be sitting right next to you this morning. The young couple with children that live very far from their families who might be sitting right next to you this morning. You are called to serve these people, to feed them, to clothe them, to invite them. Most importantly, invite them into your hearts by loving them with the love of Jesus Christ. Biblical hospitality is not merely a work of our hands, but involves our hearts. In ministry, you sometimes become a little bit hardened by situations. And I often say to Angelique, when I don't feel empathy for the pain of people anymore, I know I need to take a break. I need to take a break. When the hurt and pain of people don't affect you that much anymore. You know, what is that song that we often sing? Break my heart, Lord, for what break yours. If we become cold, so self-focused about me time, it's all about me and it's all about how comfortable I am, I'm going to live my best life. We're in trouble as a Christian community. When the focus on others are less and less and the focus on ourselves are more and more, we risk to become cold, uninviting to those who are seeking Christ's love and healing. Most of us probably don't find it too difficult to offer hospitality to our friends and family. But what about the stranger? The neighbor? The fellow worker that we don't agree with, that we just, there's always arguments. The fellow student, maybe the student in a wheelchair. How often do we welcome these or similar people who have fallen through the cracks and who are labeled outcasts in our society? Those who might live a totally different lifestyle than what you would like to see. How open are you to just welcome, not convince, just be there? That brings me to this point. It is risky. Hospitality is risky. An open heart and an open home and an open church is a target for unpleasant experiences. But it can also be the recipient of unexpected surprises. I want to read you this story. We've actually got a nice story here. It would have been great if Aidan was here this morning. Is that okay now if I tell the story? Thanks. Well, I'll put you a bit on the spot there. You're not going to say no. But I know you like the story. Aidan, a friend of mine, saw a guy who was just having a bad time, rough time. Really rough time. Aidan, struggling with his own stuff, like we all, and he saw this guy. And he says, he went to him, and he says, "Hey mate, how's it going?" He said, "No, not good. I'm struggling with this and that, etc., etc." And Aidan, who's going through difficult things himself, says, "Mate, you need to come to us, and we need to come engage," trying to make it as generic as possible. And do you know what? Not long ago, Aidan lost his best friend. And when Aidan shared the story of how God has just led him to speak to Noah that sit here this morning, he just felt so relieved, and he said, "I have lost a friend, but I have gained most likely saved another friend's life. What did Aidan do? Did he have answers? Did he give you all the answers? No. Did he offer you much? No. But he offered a welcome. He said, mate, I just want to open my door for you. I just want to open my life and my heart for you. That's it. There's no better explanation than biblical hospitality than right there. Than saying, I don't have the answers, but I open my life for you and I invite you into my life, into my friend's life. Let's go on this journey together. It's risky. There's this story that I want to read to you. A seminary student drove about 30 kilometers to church on Sunday mornings, and he would frequently pick up hitchhikers. This is happening in America, not in South Africa. Obvious reasons. One day he picked up a young man who noticed that he was wearing a suit and asked if he could go to church with him. The student said, of course you can. The stranger came to church and afterward was invited over to one of the members' home for lunch and fellowship. While there, he received a shower, some clean clothes, and a hot meal. In conversation with this young man, his host found that he was a Christian, but he had been out of fellowship with the Lord and sort of walked away from the Lord. His home was in another state, and he was just passing through on his way back. Later in the evening, they bought him a bus ticket and sent him on his way. A week later, the seminary student received a letter from the hitchhiker. Enclosed with the letter was a newspaper clipping with a headline reading, "Man turns himself in for murder." This young man had just killed a teenage boy in an attempt robbery and had been running away from the law for some time. But the kindness and hospitality of Christians had convicted him. He wanted to be in fellowship and relationship with God. And he knew he needed to do the right thing about his crime. That by their faithfulness, Christ the feast which none Jesus Christ. In fact, he did not spare. I don't know if we're friendly on God himself was an outcast who we disagree with. And let us also be assured that if they recognize the hospitality of God in us, it is because we have been faithful representation of Jesus to them. Amen.